Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. I feel like either we're the Beatles or we're opening up for the Beatles. I can't quite tell. Everyone today, my takeaways have been everyone's here for luxury, but they're also concerned by the tight capital market. So, Omer, I want to start with you. In this environment, how is the pitch to potential owners changing, either by Accor or by the brands that you oversee?
Yeah, thanks for having us, firstly, and great to be here. It is what keeps me awake all night, actually, is the cost of capital, cost of financing, inflation, geopolitical, everything else. Then is the brand pitch that we all promise. And one positive side is the resilience of the ADR. Resilience of the ADR, we'll see it everywhere in the world. As long as you can create that value and experience, I think it makes the numbers work. But today, owners are more looking for operational discipline, underwriting, making sure that the risks are mitigated. So, it used to be a lot about the brand story, but today is a lot about making sure that your story, the numbers add up at the end of the day. So
you're saying there's resilience with ADR, because I've heard some grumbling today about the new normal being $1,000 a night for a hotel room.
Yeah, I mean, when I say the ADR keep growing up, it's against all the geopolitical crisis, everything that we see, but as long as we can create that experience and value. So ADR has been resilient against all the factors that are, the financing, the inflation, and everything else. I think we're going to be looking at another great summer this year. So.
Great. Jonathan, I know you and Omer have worked together before with Raffles Boston in my backyard, but I want to go to the other coast where you're doing One Beverly Hills. Exciting stuff I saw in the LA Times, financing, all secured, all systems go. Can you tell me about the underwriting of that deal? What does it say about this perceived ceiling to US luxury?
Yeah, well, first of all, great to be here, as Omer said. So look, obviously the One Beverly Hills project, Aman Beverly Hills, Beverly Hilton, and the retail and the park we're creating there is probably without doubt the largest project in North America today, certainly in experiential hospitality and at the top end. And I think, writing a $4 billion plus loan with JP Morgan backed by Vici and others shows the confidence the market has, both in the project, hopefully in our ability to deliver the project, which will be one of the tests, but also in the wider marketplace. And I think we're seeing all around the country and all around the world that there is a great move towards experiences post-COVID. People want to enjoy themselves. We're also seeing a great explosion in wealth creation in a way in which probably the world has not seen since the Industrial Revolution. Now, if you just look at what's happening at the IPO market at this moment in time, you've got 3 companies potentially coming to the market between now and the end of the year, which in aggregate are going to have a market cap of $3 trillion. And these are unimagined numbers. So we're seeing great wealth transfer. And what people want when they're spending their money is they want confidence in the brand they're investing in. And obviously, we're investors not just in Aman Beverly Hills, but we're also investors in Aman, which we love Raffles as much as we do, but we see Aman as the premier player at the top of that luxury tree. But obviously, we've got great confidence with Raffles, and we're doing amazingly well in Boston with Omer. So I think you're seeing that people want to go around the world, and they want confidence with what they're going to experience when they turn up at the hotels. And what we're seeing, of course, is the parallel play in branded residential, where people feel confident in knowing what they're getting if they're buying a Raffles apartment in Boston, where we've sold all of them at amazing levels in Boston, and the same with Aman in Beverly Hills. So I do think that you can never say there's no ceiling, because that would be dangerous. I'd sound like certain other people over the last 10, 15 years. But I do think that there's a depth in this marketplace that we had not expected, and certainly that depth has grown over the course of the last few years.
So is this just the beginning?
I certainly don't think the market has played out.
Yeah.
I think there is a long way to go in this process. I think what you need is the right brand and the right real estate. It is interlocation. When you come to our Beverly Hills site, we've got an amazing location at the entrance of Beverly Hills. It could not be better. It's the same in Boston. We're right at the center of Raffles in Boston. You know, we bought the Dominic just downtown here, and you're seeing corporates circling us now in a way in which we didn't envisage maybe even when we bought it, let alone not envisaged by the market 2-3 years ago. Location is key in that respect.
Well, speaking of brand, I mean, it's not just the hotel partner that you choose. And Jeff, I want to bring you in here because in the LA Times article, Jonathan, there was an interesting line where it said, commercial partnerships with brands like Dolce & Gabbana, as well as signature condo sales, fueled lenders getting behind One Beverly Hills. So, Jeff, I'm curious, do you have owners of mixed-use developments coming to you in major food groups saying, I need you because I'd like Carbone in my lobby, or are they coming because they can't get financing unless you're involved?
I think it's just, you know, it's evolved, you know, since we started over the last, you know, 15 years or decade or so, where the importance of food, beverage, hospitality, experiential hospitality, all in the luxury or ultra luxury sector, you know, has kind of, you know, we were fortunate to kind of start, I'd say, right as that idea was starting to permeate, right? The idea of how important what your food and beverage was, what your service style was, what the experience was, and how that all translated and worked together, right? And what's happened is that now we're at a point where that is at an all-time high, right? Where now, to your point, developers, hotel companies, whoever it may be, have now put a premium on the importance of the food and beverage and what that means and how it creates an identity for the hotel, how it creates and puts that hotel and ranks that hotel or the development in terms of, you know, what it is going to, how it's going to be perceived. Will it be perceived as an ultra luxury project? Will it be perceived as a luxury product in general? It all has to work together. So they now lead with food and beverage and with food and beverage partnerships to the point of, you know, at this point we're now developing condos, you know, by major food group. You know, we just are about to top off our tower Villa Miami which is on the water in the design district in Miami in a month or so with 80 super high-end luxury units, and we'll have restaurants and private clubs throughout the hotel. But I think that, so yeah, I think at this point, you know, it's a package. I mean, to your point about getting phone calls, I can't tell you how many friends, you know, like Jonathan, but you know, he doesn't. We have trouble getting me to LA. But friends, you know, and congratulations to Jonathan, by the way, who's been a friend of mine for a long time, and this amazing project that finally is getting moving. I've been talking to him about it for a very long time, so I'm very happy for him. But yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the amount of phone calls that need food and beverage companies as part of their, before they even exist, right? When, to your point, when they're looking to get loans, when they're looking to get things, to be just a part of the presentation, to be a part of the, now everyone is looking at it. You know what I mean? I mean, banks didn't used to care what the restaurant was going to be in a hotel. You know, now they want to know, and it makes a big difference if it's going to be a Carbone, or if it's going to be a major food group restaurant, or if it's going to be a Zuma, or whatever the hell it's going to be, right? But but I think it makes a big difference, and you know, to your point, it's something now that everyone is paying attention, and I've been very fortunate to kind of see it from when, you know, the restaurant was something that was kind of an afterthought to now it being kind of at the front of everyone's mind, and how that's integrated throughout the whole hotel to the fact that at this point they're building entire buildings based around our kind of restaurant identities. So I think it's an incredibly exciting time.
It's a whole ecosystem, right? I mean, is the wellness, is the retail. I mean, when we discuss with Jonathan and Raffles Boston, what do we do? What do we do in this restaurant? What about this space? What do we do in the coffee shop downstairs? How do we make more sense out of all those investments? But it's not anymore the hotel-only brand. That's why we also have an Accor Paris Society and Rica, so we try to put those brands into our hotel operations, but it's full ecosystem. Retail, I get calls from owners that are saying which brand we should put on the street front. So it's not one-off, it's everything else, including wellness.
Yeah, I think the point of curation of our developments is probably the most important thing that's emerged over the course of the last few years. Which, I mean, if you look at Jeff's brands and the way that they move around the world, you know, they provide energy to the locations they're in. Now, we couldn't wait for him in Miami because he was already open, so we've just reopened the Delano in Miami Beach, and we brought in 2 Paris Society brands in Gigi Rigoletto and Mimi Kikuchi. And it's really important to match the experience and the food and beverage operation with the brand. Aman has a very different philosophy. Aman believes in the uniqueness, in the soulness of their operations, that they don't want it to be a destination in the same way, which, you know, I completely understand. So I think what the hotel groups need to understand is that I think developers have got beyond listening always to the hotel groups saying, this is what we need in food and beverage terms. It's much more of a partnership now. It's much more of a discussion between the hotel brands and the developer that say, what are we developing? What are we curating here? Because I think if most of us go to a city or a resort and we're in a hotel during the day, we quite like to go out during the day, in the evening. We want to go to a destination. So if you need to create, in Miami Beach, you need to create your food and beverage as a destination. People need to want to go there. And that's the same in various places around the world. I think, you know, we're seeing it in Boston. I think you're seeing it in London.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to attract non-hotel guests into your environment to ensure that you've got that buzz and that energy.
Is there a magic formula that the two of you are using when it comes to deciding, like, let's keep it in-house versus hand the keys over to an expert like Jeff to run F&B?
I mean, it's all about aligning, first of all. When we talk about projects, we listen to our owners and developers. It's important to sometimes to learn to hear what the expectations are. We are creating a destination. Residential is important part of that. So it's not sticking to one formula that everywhere we open an hotel, we're going to have this and that's going to be it. So it's not anymore like that. Everybody wants to experience something. We just opening in a few weeks the Langosteria in Raffles, London. I mean, we keep bringing out new restaurants in that building, and that's exactly the way it should be. We have discussed different options and opportunities. How does that brand fit into the overall destination?
How are you deciding, you know, this partnership is worth it and isn't just a case of, oh, you know, they filmed Emily in Paris in the lobby, so people are going to come take a photo and then get out of here? I mean, how do you make sure that this is genning up revenue for the entire property?
Well, as long as, you know, you get calls from the owner saying that we are very happy with what you do, then we know that we are getting it. I mean, it's always, one is the financial objectives to be achieved. So if you put pro formas, you got to respect those pro formas. You got to deliver what you say. So that's one. And second thing is, you know, food and beverage ramp up is very different than hotel ramp up. You get it right or you don't get it right. And if you get it right, it shows immediately. And you know it, you feel it. When you start questioning what else we need to do once you open, that's usually the issue.
Jeff, I want to talk about your project in Miami because, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Branded Resi was limited to a couple of high-end hotel brands. Why go the branded Resi route on top of the major food group empire?
You know, it was always, you know, our ambition to do things, you know, on a larger scale and really, you know, be able to take care of our customers 24 hours a day versus the time that they were just in our restaurants. And, you know, as we started moving to private clubs and the rest of it, you know, we keep, you know, growing from there. So it was, for us, it was honestly a very logical next step. We knew that, you know, at this point, our company and what we do stands for a certain type and level of experience, a certain type and level of service, regardless of what type of food you're eating, regardless of what cuisine we're serving, regardless of what it is. You know when you're in a major food group restaurant. You know what I mean? There's a certain style that we have. So for the customer, you know what I mean, it made a lot of sense. We know that our customers, they want to live like us. They want to live in a world created like us. You know, we always say, you know, we don't build any restaurants that we don't want to hang out in. We don't build buildings we don't want to live in either, right? You know what I mean? So you know, I think the expectation comes, the customer understands what that means, which had, you know, you know, my partner David Martin, who's a great developer in Miami, if not the best, you know, when him and I started talking about the idea of doing a major food group building, it made a lot of sense, and the market responded incredibly to it, because I think that in Miami in particular, you know, when I came down there about 6 years ago, right, you know, the day before COVID began, unknowingly moving there, you know, Miami had never really seen the type of product that we offered. True experiential, ultra luxury hospitality in the food and beverage space. Miami was very much, you know, a city driven by maybe a couple big brands, you know, a couple mom and pop restaurants, and basically everything else was a nightclub, you know, dressed up as a restaurant. No one had really ever experienced that level of service. You know, people didn't even really drink wine in Miami before we got there, right? There was no wine lists that were acceptable to any of us, right? You know what I mean? And so, you know, we kind of set a tone, and by raising the bar and opening so many restaurants, you know, in pretty quick succession over 3 or 4 years there, opening, you know, 12 places in South Florida, you know, and kind of resetting what the standard was for service and hospitality. Because when you're a New Yorker like me, when you talk about opening in Miami before, you know, 6 years ago, right, the answer is, oh, you can't get, the service is horrible, you can't get staff, you can't get, the answer it was that it's not you couldn't get staff, there was no one there to train them. There was no one there with the skills to train them properly. So when my whole crew from New York came down, we started changing the way things were done. And what you found was it wasn't that there was a lack of great people, there was a lack of great direction. And so that snowballed into what's now a giant tower. And I think that at the end of the day, you know, we pride ourselves on not only the, you know, having the best product, right, when it comes to, you know, food, beverage, service, and hospitality, but also on the other side, that's for the customer. But I think also the way that we work with our partners, whether they be developers, hotel brands, et cetera, you know what I mean? I think that, you know, they both mentioned, you know, that at this point it really is more of a partnership. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, many of the best deals that we're doing and have done is because of that philosophy and the way that we approach partnerships with the developer and with the hotel company, and often with both together, right, in a much bigger project, which, you know, we try to, you know, we execute, and we have a great team to do that, but, you know, we also, I like to think, are pretty easy to deal with, which not every restaurant company is. So I think that, you know, at this point, we get a lot of benefit from the fact that we've got an excellent product, excellent relationships, and really do approach everything that we do as this partnership, both on the operator's side and on the client side.
Is there a limit, or do you kind of think there could be a limit to scalability here? Because I feel like in a lot of our luxury panels today, it's been almost like a Damocles sword hanging over as people are like, you know, as you grow, eventually, does it start to kind of eat away at some of the exclusivity associated with some of these luxury brands?
I don't think so if you do it the right way. I mean, you need the right team behind it, right? You know what I mean? And I think that's probably the most important thing, right? You know, everyone always questions fast expansion and growth. They've been questioning me about that since I started, right? But, you know, at the end of the day, you know, we have an incredible team of people behind us. You know, many of the people that run my company have been with me since the company was founded. And I think that, you know, the team that is behind these things is what lends itself to the consistency. How we open, how we go. You know, as Omer mentioned, you know, like you only get one shot. You know what I mean? So in our business, if you open and it's not great, it's not going to be great. You might as well just close the doors, right? So it's you get one shot. And you got to basically, you know, I think we take a lot of time, and we're very specific about, you know, the way we open, how many people we need on the ground, how we do things, you know, and make sure that if we know that if we have X amount of time, X amount of people, X amount of, you know, things that we've made sure are in line, that we can execute at the highest level, and that all of our partners are going to be very happy, and that we're going to have something that, you know, fortunately, it's generally, you know, a very, very exciting success.
I think Eminem also said you only get one shot, so that's
What is that?
a good life lesson. I'm curious, Jonathan, I mean, the other thing too is Omer and the Accor team have been always good about giving us, in this, like, as we ask this existential question of what even is a lifestyle hotel, they've been pretty clear about the revenue model, 50%, correct me if the number has changed, but at least 50% of the revenue comes from F&B. And I'm always intrigued of some of the brands represented here today think luxury is by itself, lifestyle is a separate entity, church and state never shall they meet. Sometimes they come together, and it does seem like there's increasingly overlap between the two. I mean, what's kind of your view of how these two are going to evolve? You have both in the portfolio.
To be frank, I'm not sure I even understand anybody who would argue that there's no overlap between the two. Anybody who lives or operates in a hotel, be that in the residential element or the hotel element, is living a lifestyle, right? And your brand needs to service the client who you've attracted to live their life within your premises. And the notion that there's that there's a compartmentalization between luxury and lifestyle, it simply can't meet any logical sort of standard of analysis. So I think that the important thing is that you have to understand the client that you're approaching and that you're seeking to attract when you are in the design stage of your hotel. I think that if I was to pick your question apart a different way, I think for a long time, the hotel groups and the developers obsessed about the rooms and nothing else. They didn't look at the hotel as a holistic experience. But while the truth is, if you look at the amount of time you spend in your room compared to the amount of time you spend outside of your room, not asleep, hopefully, that it's disproportionate that you're outside of your room. So I do think it's important that when we're designing things and we're looking at what we're looking to do, we are looking at it on a holistic basis across all the asset, or across the entire asset. So if you take the Delano as an example, I mean, there are a number of aspects to the Delano. We have the main hotel and the lobby, and we have a rose bar, and we have a cafe. We then have a restaurant, so we then have the pool, and then we have the beach, and we have a spa. All of that needs to be wrapped in together within a common theme of the brand, and ensuring that the client, against the price point that we're seeking to attract, is the right mix of inventory and attractions and experiences against the price point that we're seeking to attract. So, I think I don't think you can in any way divorce the hotel from the lifestyle. I mean, when I go to a hotel, I want to enjoy myself. I want to use the facilities. I want to be on the beach. I want to be in the spa. I want to be in the gym. Very important part of the process, right? So all of this is wrapped up together. And I think historically, maybe people did detach themselves and they would parcel out the spa to one party and the gym out to another party. But I think those days are well gone.
The Delano is actually a perfect example of all of this, right? Because if you go back 20, 25 years, right? The Delano was one of the first hotels with tiny rooms, but it was more based around.
Not so tiny, Jeff. Come on. You're giving the wrong impression.
Right. Well, I know you made them a little bigger, but when you went back, right, where you had small rooms, it was all about the common space, it was all about the party, it was all about day life and nightlife 25 years ago. Really, the model that kind of you got to give kind of Ian Schrager credit for, right, for creating, where when we were all kind of coming up, the Delano was the place to be. It was not the place to be because of the rooms themselves. It was the place to be because of what was going on there, the people, the party, and you wanted to stay there so you could be in the middle of it, right? And now, fast forward a quarter century, right? We're kind of, now Jonathan's reinvigorated it, now kind of with the same big picture principle, right? Because if you said to me, name where this started, the Delano would be one of my examples, right? Of where this whole experience, lifestyle, luxury all combined, where it was into what was a holistic product, and even to your point earlier, where food and beverage and hospitality at that time was more beverage based, we're driving people to the hotel itself as well, right? And where 50% or plus, as you mentioned, revenues are coming from food and beverage, et cetera. So, fast forward now to what Jonathan, the great project he just opened at the Delano, it kind of explains this whole cycle, because what's happened is that day life, nightlife, everyone partying in the common spaces has now turned into a desire for actually super premium, ultra luxury food and beverage experiences, which obviously has been is just the way things have evolved. People are now much more focused on, they want to eat, drink, and have a great time, but they're also, to your point, very focused on wellness. They're very focused on other things, and now that whole package comes together to be much bigger than the whole. But that idea almost started with the Delano, and so it's kind of almost full circle that of everything we're talking about, that Jonathan's bringing it kind of together.
I think you make the point well. I think that over the course of the last 2-3 years, together with Omar's colleagues in Ennismore, we've really reinvigorated the Delano brand, and we've brought it back to the marketplace. One element that we haven't talked about that we've really integrated within the fabric has been art and culture within the Delano. We've really worked together with a group of very young local artists to give them a platform to bring out the soul of the DNA of the hotel within Miami Beach. And that's something that will be spread within the Delano as we grow the brand globally, which is what we've been doing, because we've got London and Paris and Costa Rica and Puglia and Istanbul and all coming in the pipeline. So I think that it is an important point that when you're doing these projects and when you're working with the real estate, actually you are integrating the brand within that process, and that the brand means something and stand for something.
When you're watching how people are interacting with these hotels over the years, and seeing shifts like that, does the overall formula change towards capital allocation for build-outs?
Well, they're not cheap, right? And you talk about the growth in ADR over the course of the last 5 years. Well, construction costs have certainly kept a pace with that. So, the refurbishment of these projects is expensive. And as both these guys are saying, they've both got huge amounts of experience. Pretty soon whether you've got it right or wrong. From your early days whether it's right or wrong. And that's why we're so excited about Miami Beach at the moment, because we're, fingers crossed, we think we got it right. But you're forever worrying about your next project and trying to make sure you're keeping up with everything that everyone else is doing. And you've got the technology as well, which is another aspect to that process. So there's a huge number of aspects that you're bringing together in ensuring that your capital is being well served, ensuring that the investors with you are comfortable and get their return on capital. And there's another issue in the US, which I can say as an Englishman, which is that there are certain places in America where it's maybe easier to invest today than others. And that's an issue that America needs to get its head around, because there are certain states where you get a bit nervous. Now, there are oases within those states that you'll be very happy to invest in, like Beverly Hills, but there are other aspects where you feel more comfortable allocating your capital at this point in time than maybe others.
I want to end with a hot topic. World Cup is coming up. There's been a little bit of back and forth of, are hotels going to underperform in this, or could there be a Hail Mary at the end? I know wrong sport reference, but late last week, Internova Travel Group put out a report saying luxury sports travelers are waiting later than ever to book, but when they do, they're spending more than ever on rates, F&B, experiences, the whole package. Omer, I know you all have a nice package offering at Raffles Boston. So, how are you feeling right now?
Look, we have got hotels in LA, Miami, Boston, and New York, all of which have stadium around them. And it's right to say that at this point in time, the pickup has not been what we expected, period. Now, I think there's two aspects to that. One, of course, is the global noise, the geopolitical situation. A number of people are nervous at traveling around the world at this point in time. And the second thing is, I think FIFA got their ticketing policy horribly wrong. I think they set an arrogant tone with the pricing of their tickets. So even if you're happy to go and spend thousands of dollars a night in a hotel in one of the major cities, you feel a bit ripped off if you're paying $1,500, $200, $2,000 for a ticket for a group soccer game. Now, having said that, what we are seeing is that when people are coming, the rates are very high. Rates are very, very strong for the amount of pickup. And the other point, of course, is that they've made the World Cup bigger this year. So there's more games. There's more games in the group stages. So it's very difficult to predict today how people are going to react in the round of 32, 16, 8, and then in the semis and the final.
And
I'm sure there'll be a big splurge at the end,
Yep.
but I think the group stages will be softer.
And I think in luxury business, you often see that bookings are coming later and later. So I think as an operators, we just have to see that as an opportunity and to make that last minute booking friction free, because you are ready to pay 20 or 30% more at some point, but we want to make sure that that process has no friction and it's smooth, because you're paying also 20, 30% more. And you see that in summer destinations and resorts, just people pay last minute and book last minute, and therefore they expect that value from us to make sure that it's smooth.
All right, not all dark clouds. Great, they are buzzing us off. So gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you
Pleasure.
for having us.
Good luck.